This week on London Real, we're taking you back to our 2012 interview with Futurist Jacque Fresco.
We must eventually design a language that's not subject to interpretation. Whenever you talk to people, you think you're talking to people. It goes in their ear and comes out in relation to their background. They don't hear exactly what you say. There is no way you can think outside of your culture.
What if we elected you president this year and you started in the Oval Office January 20th, 2013?
I'd be shot in 3 days. Who makes the decisions in the Venus Project? The answer, nobody. They arrive at them. We abolish all separate nations because they're all corrupt.
Jacque Fresco has been designing cities of the future.
What do you think of England and London?
Foul, awful, no city planning. All cultures are corrupt.
And the banking system, what do we do with that?
Bank it gone, no money anymore.
London Real presents Jacque Fresco, The Venus Project, Redux.
Most politicians know nothing. Please don't take my word for it. Ask them.
Summer, summer, summertime. I'm thinking of that Will Smith song, which we probably all partied to over the days. We got a sunny day here in London, England. We don't get many, so I'm going to take advantage of it. This week on the show, we're taking you back. We're going retro to a guest we had on probably a year and a half ago for episode number 47. And at the time, he was 96 years old. And he is the futurist, Jacque Fresco, the creator of the Venus Project, and a man who was kind of remade famous by the Zeitgeist Movement and the Zeitgeist films. And he's been preaching the ideas of a resource-based economy and technology solutions that make our humanity better for a long time. I mean, let's be honest, he was talking about this stuff before it became trendy, before it became popular, before Al Gore started talking about it. And, you know, Fresco's been around, man. This guy had conversations with Einstein, okay? That's old school. So we had him on the show. It was quite an honor. We were actually contacted by him and they asked to be on the show. And for us, for such a new, early, broadcast that London Real was, it really made our show. And it was, for a long time, the most watched show with over 200,000 views. And so people really like Jacque. They like his message. And it's just amazing that people really relate to him. And I think it's because, he's been dedicating his life to the way he believes. And it's not just an economic platform or a technology platform. It's really a different way of looking at humanity. And we sat down with Jacque. Funny enough, his handlers left him alone in the studio with us, and we were like, wow, what a big leap of trust. And we sat there and had this conversation, and Jacque is sharp as a tack with a great wit, and I just hope that when I'm 96, my body and mind still works that way. So please enjoy this hour plus. We've remixed it, so it's a single person, single camera format, which people really liked on the Dorian Yates and the Rupert Sheldrake, because it kind of brings you a bit more in the old school split screen. Although I still have love for our split screen format, man. I miss those sometimes, where you got 3 faces on the screen. So I hope you enjoy Jacque. If you want to learn more about what he does, you can go to the Venus Project. His partner, Roxanne Meadows, I've been in touch with her, and they do lectures down in Venus, Florida, every Saturday afternoon for 4 hours, and you can go see Jacque. I don't think he's doing much traveling these days because he's rocking 98 right now. God bless, and but you can go see him, and he'll talk you through everything. So big love out to those guys, and I hope you enjoy listening to him answer some of our tough questions. My grandpa used to say that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And when you're online, it all comes down to your website. And I say this time and time again when I get suggested a guest, or I hear about a company that we might interview on Silicon Reel. The first thing I do is I check out their website. And if it's unprofessional or kind of crappy, You know, I always wonder, you know, am I talking with someone that's serious about themselves? And so that's why we take real pride in our websites and who we work with on the show. And those are the guys at Squarespace. They've been running our website, londonreal.tv, and our siliconreal.com for over a year now. And they are an all-in-one platform to make it fast and easy to build your own professional website or portfolio. These guys have the tech down. It's drag and drop. It is easy. I used to run a WordPress site, and I used to have to FTP audio files and all this nonsense. And now when you see these blogs that I write every week where I talk to you about my personal impressions of the guests, I literally just bust those out, drop the picture in, boom, and it's done. And you can actually go now and check out our brand new londonreal.tv site, and you'll see it. It's just got rich images. If you click into the episode page, you can search all of our different 150 episodes based on psychedelics or Bitcoin or finance or health and fitness or philosophy. So it's just, you know, I love what these guys do. And if you want to check them out, it's easy. Click on the logo here or go to squarespace.com. Use the code London, you'll get 10% off, but you don't need to buy anything. You can just go on now for free and start creating your website right now. And then if you want to take that leap, it's like $8 a month to get involved with these guys. And they can even create your own logo, and these guys are going places. So we're really happy to have them back in the fold here at London Real. And people always ask me, like, Brian, can I donate some Bitcoins to you, that kind of thing. You know what I say? I say, if you want to support us, support our advertisers. So go to squarespace.com, use that code, and give them a shout out, and let them know that you're feeling the love, that they're bringing this message to you. So very excited to have those guys back on board. You'll be hearing more about Squarespace. And of course, I'm not going to forget our long-term supporters, which are the guys at Bulletproof. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, then you wouldn't know that Bulletproof is a coffee that's free of molds and toxins. In that, you put some brain octane oil, which is the best of the coconut, and some grass-fed butter, and you mix it up. I just had a cup. I have one every day. I've had it now every day for like 9 months. It's crazy. And everyone I give it to, which is basically every single guest on London Real, they all love it. It's like 100% hit rate. And these guys are all about how to make your own self better, your brain, your body, everything. And I've done a short video on sleep hacking where thanks to the Bulletproof guys, I gave you 2 free apps and 5 free tips to hack your sleep. I track my sleep every night, and they've got so many other supplements, so many other ways of training your mind, whether it's heart math, lots of free information. So go check those guys out. It's bulletproofexec.com, or go to their store, upgradedself.com. It's all good, and we're big fans of the whole Bulletproof movement. So get involved. And that's it, man. I'm gonna leave you guys. It's a sunny day here. I got to get this episode cranked out and uploaded, and then I'm off. But if you want to give us some feedback, you know where I'm at. It's Brian at londonreal.tv. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. If you want to book a guest for us or give us a suggestion, please do it. I got like 5 guys around the world that are booking guests, man. We're not doing this solo here. We need everyone's help. So I really appreciate those guys putting in the effort. And yeah, more things coming. We're gonna have t-shirts in the house soon. We got one company that's printed a couple samples, so we'll have a link on there if you want to support some London Real. And if I see you on the street, I'll give you a hug if you're wearing one of those shirts. I always sit and chat with people too. If you ever see me, just grab me. I love talking to people about the show. So thanks to that. And now I'm going to leave you with you know, a unique individual, man, one of a kind, and just a real pleasure and honor that we had an interview with him. You know, it was just a special time, and one that probably will never happen again. So now I leave you with Mr. Jacque Fresco. Let's do this.
Let's go.
Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to London Real. My name is Brian Rose. Joining me as usual is Mr. Nick Gabriel, and today we're very excited to have in studio Futurist Jacque Fresco, who's the founder and director of the Venus Project.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's
both of you.
You know, you've come a long way. You've come all the way from Florida to London.
Yes.
That's quite a journey.
Quite a journey is right.
You know, I heard a quote from you one time, Jacque, and you said that love is a bullshit word.
Well, what I meant by that is I've never met a person that loves everything they've ever done. Sometimes you like yourself a lot, sometimes down, sometimes what a stupid thing I did. So if you live with a replica of yourself, how long would you be together?
That's very interesting.
That is really interesting.
Wow.
You also once said that there are no lazy people and no creative people.
No.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I asked creative people over the years, what is creativity? They say, I don't know, it's just something that comes up naturally. That's what they say. They really don't know. I'm going to try to tell you what creativity is, so you'll understand it. But those of you that can't remember, you better make notes. Creativity is taking known elements and putting them together in different ways. In other words, if you go to a movie and you see a Martian, you think, gee, those Hollywood people have good imagination. No, they don't. A Martian has a grasshopper's head and crab's claws. They're not made up of original ideas. All thinking is putting known elements together. If you were raised in some primitive culture, the headhunters of the Amazon, if you never saw anything else, never traveled, you'd be a headhunter. And if I says to you, doesn't it bother you to have 10 shrunken heads? He might say, yes, my brother has 20. Is he bad? No. He's normal to that culture.
Interesting.
There are no good or bad people. People are shaped by culture or subcultures that they're part of, or their religion. And so every word you use, every facial expression, your mother said cup, bottle, light, over and over again, papa, mama, and that's where you got it from. And when you think in terms of your culture. If you don't understand that, if you ask an Eskimo, who I'll tell him, you can have anything you want if he's never left that area, if he's lived in northern Alaska all his life. He'd never say, I want a Mercedes or a twin-engine Beechcraft. He can't say that. It's outside of his frame of reference. Am I making that point?
Mm.
So interesting to understand how so many of our desires and expectations are culturally conditioned. And we think they come from within, but they actually come from external sources.
Man, whatever I say about man applies to me also. Man cannot think or reason. I'm going to back it up if you give me a chance to before you get mad at me.
I was starting to get mad, but I will listen.
Okay. By that I mean that it is not possible for man to invent anything. And I spoke at Princeton at the sociology department, and I wanted everybody to come, so I titled the lecture, Man Can't Think or Reason. That made everybody angry, and they all wanted to come. So they came to the auditorium, and the head of the optics department said, I take issue with you. I believe man can think and reason. I said, give me one example of man thinking, anything. He said, there are thousands of examples. I said, I can't do anything with that. Give me one example. He says, there was a time when a camera did not exist, and somebody had to think of a box camera. So I asked him if he knew that 1,000 years ago in the Holy Land, they made their houses out of mud. They didn't have concrete, and they didn't have the mixtures we had. And when they made their houses out of concrete, they made a little hole in the concrete so you can tell whether it's daylight out there. And when you make a little hole in the black hovel, you can see the people walking upside down on your wall. Of course, they didn't know what it was. They called it the upside down world. They charged 2 pieces of silver for you to see the upside down world. If you go into a barn today, and there's a knothole, you know what I mean, it's small. If the sun is out on the cows, you'll see the cows walking upside down on the wall. That's where the box camera came from. So nobody ever said, no, it's got to make a camera.
So it wasn't an invention, it was an accident.
Yeah, so same with language. They say people invented language to communicate. That's strictly BS, bad science. In other words, there is no way you can think outside of your culture. You say, well, Tesla invented the wireless. He had to think of it. So I said, look, let's face it. When you bought electric wire in the old days, they wrapped it around a cardboard spool so it wouldn't get tangled up. And if you had a spool, you didn't know it was broken in the metal wire, so you connected 2 electrodes to it to see if you get a flow of current. If you happen to have a coil nearby, it induced a current in it. That's where Tesla got it from. Induction, automatic. He didn't say, got to make wireless. The brain doesn't work that way. You can't say, I got to make a wireless, or I have to make a ladder. Although they tell you that plants grow in school, they can't grow unless the sun's out, the moisture's right, the soil is right, and the heat is right. Of themselves, plants will not grow.
Interesting.
Jacque, you like shocking people a lot.
That's all right. I don't mean to. I mean to speak. You always say I'm interested in the truth. Well, when I was a kid, I met Einstein. And I said, do you believe in God? He said, which one? Then I said, well, do you believe in truth? He said, what do you mean by truth? That certain things are so. He says, like what? He pinned me down. He wouldn't let me get away with language. I said, well, this is smooth. He says, you really believe that, don't you? I said, yes, I do. And he put it under a microscope, and it looked rough. So I said, is that what it's really like? He said, we cannot see things as they really are, only as our receptors. You can't see the craters of the moon unless you look at a telescope, because your receptors don't pick it up. There are radio waves crossing this room. You can't sense them. There are germs on the table. With a microscope, you can. So humans, they use the word higher consciousness. You can't be conscious unless you had variable receptors. Do you know what I mean by that?
What's a variable receptor?
Microscope, telescope, magnetometers, different instruments to sense things you can't sense. So when people say, the way I see the world is the way it is, that's ridiculous. We can't. We can only see it dependent on the quality of our receptors and background.
Wow, that's very interesting.
So does that mean for the Venus Project, you didn't invent anything?
That's right.
What about all your designs and a lot of your revolutionary ideas with the Venus Project?
Well, they come about through a special process. What is a creative person? If you show a child a book on insects, all kinds of insects, grasshoppers, centipedes, spiders, all kinds, he has more to think with. If you show him a book on all kinds of fish, the more he sees, the broader his concepts. So the more books I look at on architecture, primitive and advanced, and concepts of other people, I extract from that. Your frame of reference is what you see. But if everybody had a pointed head, real sharp, and a nose a foot long, you'd have surgery done to fit in with your culture. Otherwise, they run down the street and look at you and say, he's got a funny nose. There's no such thing as beauty. All that's made by man. There's a beautiful sunset. She's a beautiful woman. If everybody had horns, that would be beautiful to you. If everybody were black with white spots on their face, everybody would be beautiful. It depends on you. You make up your own standards. Or as they say, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. But if you bring up people to believe in beauty, then they have beauty contests. Now, if the girl's face were made of putty and she shaped her nose, I can see giving her a medal or something. But she didn't shape her face. What do you have a beauty contest for? What's it for? It's all that all cultures, not just this one, not just England or America, is basically corrupt. Its language is old. It was designed hundreds of years ago, the British language, or the American language. That means that you can't talk to people. Whenever you talk to people, you think you're talking to people. It goes in their ear and comes out in relation to their background. They don't hear exactly what you say. So when you read the Bible, it's subject to interpretation.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Somebody says, this is what Jesus meant. Another person says, oh, no, he meant that. The third person says, you're both wrong. So you have the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, because it's subject to interpretation. So we must eventually design a language that's not subject to interpretation, where everybody gets a similar reaction. Mathematics, chemistry. When a chemist writes a formula and submits it to an organization, they turn out the same thing no matter where in the world. It's not subject to interpretation. Mm-hmm. Same with engineering. When an engineer designs a bridge, he puts a list of what that metal contains. You know, cobalt, iron, whatever it contains to make it that strong. He also gives the specifications of the bridge, the thickness of the metal, the type of metal. And that's not subject to interpretation. If bridge engineering was subject to interpretation, they could say, I think the beams are this big. Another guy said, no, they're that big. And you can't do things where language is subject to interpretation. That's why each person in England, France, Germany, here's what they say, and they put it in terms of their background.
And how does
so
that...
we're not talking to each other. If you don't believe me, look at the presidential elections. The Democrats can't talk to the Republicans. The Republicans can't talk to the Democrats. They both lie about each other. All cultures are corrupt.
So what's the solution to that?
The solution is the Venus Project.
Okay, can you tell us about the Venus Project? Because some of our listeners don't know about it, and I know something about it, but I don't know everything about it. So.
That's fair enough. I would say that children, if you get them to join the Mickey Mouse Club, you damage their brains. They do have big things like that in America, the Mickey Mouse Club. And then they tell her that Cinderella touched a white mouse and it turned into a horse. If you bring up kids with all of that sort of stuff, you damage their brain. And by the time they're a certain age, they speak a certain way. I want a balloon, and you think they're original. They're not. They're saying the same things other kids have. Having children is a pain in the butt because they have nothing new to say. You have to wipe their behind, take them to the bathroom. You have to make sandwiches for them, pack their lunch for school, and you can't talk to them till they develop a language. So the language they develop is, I want a train, Daddy. When my kid came to me,
you have kids,
and he
right?
said, Daddy, the wheel came off my car. If you understand the grammar of motives, the question is, when he handed me that car, he was saying, fix it. When he said the wheel came off, he was saying, fix it. So I took the wheel and looked at the minute car, and I said, I'll get you toy cars for babies where the wheels don't come off. And I threw it in the garbage, and I picked up my magazine. I was watching him. That lower lip goes out. I said, what's the matter? I said, you thrown it away. I says, I'll get you baby toys where the wheels don't come off. He says, maybe I can fix it. So I grabbed it and gave it to him. And he's sitting on the couch. It took 3 minutes. He got it together. Then I picked him up and said, how did you do that? He said, Daddy, I'm not that little. And if you say, here, let Daddy fix it, let Mommy fix it, you produce a blob. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Are you saying that it's an education issue with
yes,
children?
Yes, it is. Everything is.
Okay. And you're saying the Venus Project is all about, from the very beginning, how we educate? What
shapes human behavior.
Okay.
Today they say this man is good, this man is autistic, this man is gifted. All bullshit, all lies, have nothing to do with the real world. There's no such thing as a gifted person. A person that's very creative has been exposed to a great deal of situations. In other words, if you just lived in Weehawken County, Pennsylvania, and you never left that, you're a Weehawkenite. But if you live in different communities, like when Americans go to Germany, they go to the American club. You don't get the feel of the German family. So I'm saying, when you travel, try to live with Polynesians, try to get the feel of the culture. You don't do that if you go to the American club.
So the Venus Project encourages this kind of...
The Venus Project encourages you to work with your children, to give them the best of knowledge you're able to give them. In other words, parents don't know how to raise children. They won't let a human being touch a turbojet engine unless they go to school for many years. Raising a human being is very complex. If you're a Lutheran, I say, you don't play with that little Catholic boy. I'm poisoning you. I'm damaging your behavior. Do you know what I mean? Now, if a person learns how to say 3 words, which are very difficult, I don't know. I used to ask people, do you think we'll ever get to the moon? No, not in 1,000 years. I said, have you studied rockets? No. Have you studied space travel? No. Do you know anything about the moon? No. But I believe everyone should have a right to their own opinion. That's the worst thing you can do, give people the right to their own opinion. In other words, if you have a sister and she lives across the way from me, and I see 10 guys coming out of her apartment, I can have all kinds of opinions, right? She can be a language instructor, a ballet instructor, an art instructor. So the answer is, I don't know what she does. Not, I think you're right, you know.
Jacque, do you not feel that we need mental heuristics and stereotypes to help us make our way through the world? Because if we just
need formulas, we need understanding. In other words, when I work with kids, I give them seeds. They put it in the ground, and they water it, and they depend on the sunlight, and they know that the seed of itself cannot grow. And when the first shoot comes up, since they can't write, I have them draw pictures of the first shoot coming up. And I say, now I want you to block the sun. I ask the kids to do that. They block the sun, and the plant begins to shrivel. I say, take the blockage away. It comes back again. Stop the watering. It shrivels again. So they understand that the plant of itself cannot grow. Neither can a human being. If you raise a human being in a gray ball and feed it and wipe their behind, take care of them, and let them out when they're 17, they're drooling idiots.
So you're for practical learning. You want to put people in the deep end and watch them swim.
Hands-on learning only.
Okay.
Because when you talk about certain things, a kid thinks in terms of his own background, doesn't hear what you say. So in the future, all education will show visuals of exactly what you've got in mind, how parts go together, how the pavement turns up, so no car can hit a kid. People say, I care, I have feelings. Well, what is your recommendation? Don't take my word for anything I say, but ask anyone running for political office. Say, how can you prevent war? I don't know. There's always been war. There'll always be wars. Say, how can you increase the agricultural yield? I don't know. I'm not an agriculturist. What do you know? Most politicians know nothing. Please don't take my word for it. Ask them.
So are there leaders at the Venus Project? Are there any leaders?
No.
No. And in the future cities?
There are people that are studying various aspects of it, and they come up with the most efficient way to design a city is the most efficient way. In other words, if we make our cities round with everything in the middle, the computer, the socially integrated computer, that adjusts everything in that city. You know, in the old days they talked about open sesame for a door to open. Today you go to a supermarket, you don't have to say anything, the door is open. So we've surpassed primitive concepts. A Frenchman watched a bird fly, and he said, gee, if I made wings and put my arms in it and beat the air, I might be able to fly. He jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. There's no way to know. That's why nobody ever makes a mistake in their life. When you take your belt off and hit your kids, that's what you picked up from your environment. When you say, I'm gonna get me a nigger and I'm gonna kick his ass, that's what you picked up from the Klan environment. There's no such thing as man thinking. He can't. Now I say, well, Edison invented the electric light. Did he really? Here's the truth. Edison didn't know how different wires would conduct electricity. So he ran electricity through different kinds of metal. Some of it would glow white hot, so he bent it like the letter U to get all the light in a given area. And he put it on his desk and it fell over and burnt papers, so he put a glass over it. That's the beginning of the electric light. Nobody says, I got to make an electric light. There's no way man can do that. And in school they try to tell me that man invented the wheel. That was the beginning of the technical age. Not true. A log fell over another log. When you pulled it, the bottom one rolled. If there was one stone in the way of that whole log, it wouldn't roll. So they shaved the bark off. This took years off the middle. So the middle was thinner and the edges were larger. That's where the wheel came from.
So the Venus...
somebody said to me from the optics department at Princeton, I take issue with you. I think man can think and reason. So I says, give me one example of man thinking. He said, there are thousands of examples. I said, I can't do anything with that. Give me one example. He said, well, the man had to invent a camera. And I explained that to you.
Yeah, you've explained that.
Yeah.
Then I said, see if you can think of it. Nobody knows how big to make a propeller. Do you make it this big, this big? You make it the wrong size, the plane doesn't move. My kid said to me one day, he said, Daddy, what makes an airplane fly? Is it the propeller? I said, if the engine doesn't turn the propeller, it wouldn't turn. Is it the engine? No, if you don't put fuel in that engine, it won't go over. Is it the fuel? If there's no oxygen, the fuel won't combust. It's many interacting variables that shape human behavior, not one thing. What's the cause of a serial killer? They have no idea that he's a bad person. He's no worse than anyone else. We're all bad people in this culture because we have judgments and we look at things, we don't understand how they work, so we invent gods and demons that punish people with disease and all that. If scientists thought that way, they would say, what makes the bubonic plague? They say, I don't know. And they found little fleas that live on rats that jumped on the human body and infected it. And they got rid of the rats and they got rid of the problem. The church has no way of dealing with any problems at all.
So how does the Venus Project change the world? Where do you start? Because it seems like such a huge problem you're talking about. You're talking about language, you're talking about behavior, how we teach our kids, you're talking about technology to a certain extent. How do we get from this Democrats and Republicans yelling at each other in the conventions to, is there an ideal world that the Venus Project sees one day?
There's a better world, never ideal.
Okay.
You can never design the best city. You can design the best city you know how to design at this time. But 10 years from now, there'd be newer cities. Kids would generate their own cities in the future.
Okay.
And their own concepts.
The best city you know how to design right now, how could we get towards that city? Because we're not going towards it right now,
Here's
are we?
what I did. I said, Jacque, how are you going to change the world? In the Arab world, a guy may have 10 wives or 15 if he can afford it. And so all people are very different. How are you going to reach them? I said, I didn't know. That's when I was 21. So I said, why don't you test your system, see if it works? So I said to myself, thinking is talking to yourself. If I say, I'll see you Saturday, he goes like, I have to take the kids to Aunt Minnie's. No, I can't see you Saturday. Thinking is not a special process. It's talking to yourself. So when I said to myself, how do you know you can change the world? I says, I don't. Then why don't you test yourself to see if it works? So I joined the Ku Klux Klan in Miami, and I dissolved
What year
it.
was this?
Oh, about 65 years ago.
Okay.
And I dissolved it in a month and a half. Then I joined the White Citizens Council. They hate foreigners, all foreigners, particularly Orientals and blacks. So I joined that organization. I dissolved it in 1 month alone.
With new ideas?
Well, by exposing them to the way I thought about those things.
Okay.
So you don't ever attack. When I met the head of the Klan, he owned a war surplus store. You know what that is?
Yeah, yeah. Ammunitions and guns and things like that.
And I used to buy lenses from him. He said, Jacque, what do you do with the lenses you buy from me? I said, I make optical devices. He says, can I see it someday? I said, anytime, Lou, but call me first. He came to my lab. He was so impressed that he said, Jacque, would you mind coming to a Klan meeting and explain to boys how you think? I said, they wouldn't listen to me, Lou. He says, I'm in charge. I'll get them to listen to you. That's what I needed. Don't attack. Because one day he said to me in the surplus store, he said, you're a smart guy, Jacque. What do you think of the Ku Klux Klan? I said, it's a great organization, but it doesn't go far enough. That gets his ear. If you attack, you lose it.
Again, you're shocking people to get their attention.
Well, I got
it worked.
his attention. And he said at the Klan meeting, Jacque is going to talk to you for 1 hour. Listen to what he says, then ask questions. Because right now, you can't ask questions. You're not qualified. If you were raised in Georgia, in the Klan area, uneducated people, they say, aren't you a member of the Klan? We're not going to buy stuff from your store. So you join the Klan. And you join the Klan not because you know anything, because all the people there pat you on the back if you join the Klan. So I learned how to dissolve the Klan. So when I got back to New York City, I asked a lot of people, who are the most backward people in New York? I just wanted a consensus. They said, not all Arabs, but the Arabs that live in Atlantic Avenue, Brooklyn. I said, what makes you think they're primitive? They still believe the earth is flat, so I called the head of the group. Always work with the head of the group, never the group. His name was Elbaz. He said to me, you're Arab? That's the way he spoke. I'm imitating his voice.
You have good accents, by the way.
Yes. He says, you are Arab? I said, Air means yes in Arabic. I speak a little bit of many languages. I'll tell you why later.
Okay.
Anyway, he said to me, you believe the world is round? I said, yes. He went, where he comes from, that means it's not possible. So I said, can I meet with you? He said, where your father he born? I said, Lebanon. He said, very good, come and saw me. Means come and see me. So I came to see him, and he held up his hands like this. He says, you believe the world is round like this? I said, yes. He kept shaking his head. He says, if the world is round, he pointed to his head to show how smart he was. If the world is round, man fall me down here. All the water, he fall me down. That's the words he used from the world. So I figured, boy, if I can't change him, I can't change the world. So I said, how are you going to change him? Well, I thought about it before I went there. I gave him a balloon to hold in his hand. I put some Rice Krispies in his hand and told him to hold his hand away from the balloon. And I rubbed it with fur fast. An electrostatic charge pulled all the cornflakes out of his hand, and it adhered to the balloon all around. And his jaw hit the pavement. He said, world he magnet? I said, air means yes. Ah, and he explained that to the others. It took me 2.5 hours. I didn't go this fast with him. I went slower.
So you use science, basically, or you used a non-language in order to communicate with someone. Okay. Can I get you to slide up just a little bit, Jacque, so we can keep you in frame?
Jacque, I wanted to ask you, it seems to me that you're someone who, at a very early age, realized that there was something not right with the current systems in our world.
Where did I get that difference from?
Well, more specifically, was there a pivotal incident which caused you to feel that way?
Yes, my grandfather.
Okay.
He said to me, people came from all over the world to America, and they brought the printing press, language, different religions. He says, if you love the world, never pledge allegiance to any one country. They're all corrupt. Pledge allegiance to the earth to take care of it, never dump toxic materials into rivers. The U.S. Army, about 40 years ago, dumped 67 tons of nerve gas off the coast of Miami. These American soldiers, they must be stupid beyond description, because they don't even know they obey orders. You don't obey orders, you listen to ideas. If they don't make sense, you question them till they do make sense. So what happened? My grandfather made it impossible for me to pledge allegiance to the American flag. So when the teacher said, we're all going to pledge allegiance today, I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. She didn't ask me why. She grabbed me by the ear right to the principal's office, and she said, he doesn't want to pledge allegiance. So the principal said to the teacher, you're excused. The minute she left the room, he put his arm around me. He says, why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does.
Yeah.
I said, everybody once believed the earth was flat. That doesn't make it flat. So I said, well, what do you think of our teaching methods? Terrible. What do you think of American history? Strictly BS, bad science, or bullshit, depending on your background. So he said, what's the matter with American history? I said, everybody in a history book always says the right thing. When you read of science, you'll find out that Edison had to go through 7,000 different elements before he found the one that would burn. No politician makes the right decisions. They make mistakes. They make erroneous decisions. So history books don't look like that. They look like they're trying to get people to be uniform. Then you can control them if they have similar values. But if you brought up people as individuals, you'd have 50 different political parties, not Democrats and Republicans.
Wow, that's a very good explanation. You know, I saw an interview with you with Larry King in 1974.
Well, Larry King was a nice guy. He was honest.
He was good. He was.
However, there was a problem.
What's that?
I called cigarettes cancer sticks on one of his shows. I said, if you smoke for 20 years or 15 years, you'll get heart disease or cancer. Most people do that smoke continuously. And I said, he said, well, what do you think of the American automobile industry? They have an airbag in front of you. When the car hits another car, the airbag inflates. I said, well, if you get hit on the side, your head goes right through the glass. The whole inside has to be an airbag. He says, why don't they do that? I said, Larry, I can't answer that. Then later, after 4 times on the show, he said, can you come in and not talk about certain things? Don't leave the cigarettes alone because that sponsors our station.
Sure.
The cigarettes, the cornmeal, everything that they sell you. And all the auto companies, why don't attack? I didn't attack the automobile. I just showed him where they don't work, the airbag. And he never said, thanks, I never thought of it that way. He could have done that. He could have said, hey, auto companies, listen to this guy. You know, he didn't say that. He said to me, I depend on advertising. I understand that. I understand I can't have you on unless you talk about the future, but stay away from individual things. I understand his reason for it. Is he a nice guy? Yes. He has a family. He has to support people. And you can't be direct in a culture that's not direct.
Right. Well, on that show, you said that the way that civilization in the modern world was, it was not sustainable. And you said in 15 or 20 years, it won't exist in the current form that it is. And that was 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Unless we go to war, I said.
Oh, is that what you said?
War hires everybody again.
Okay.
But now we have war going on all over, and it's not helping in America.
Are you saying war postpones what?
War, not me, but Smedley Butler, who was a top army man, said, I've been fighting for private industry, not for the well-being of people. I'm a prostitute. All of us are prostitutes when we work in this culture. The minute you go to work for any industry, when you punch that time clock, you're in a dictatorship. Think about it.
That's so true. That is so true.
It's hard to argue with that. But do you think that the current state of being in this world is unsustainable?
Yes, it's unsustainable because they're making nuclear weapons, and scientists that gave them the formula were very stupid individuals. You don't give children guns to play with, real guns. You don't give an undeveloped culture nuclear weapons. The scientist says, what makes war? What makes hatred? What makes a serial killer? They're not scientists, they're specialists. Some specialists in structural engineering, some bridge building, but they know nothing about psychology or sociology. They have to be well informed into the factors that shape human behavior, and they're not. That's why you have conflict.
How long do you think the world has, Jacque? If you
That I can't say.
You can't say. Have you, in your lifetime, in what way have you seen the world deteriorate? Is there anything that's really shocked you?
The first depression, 1929, the market crashed, and I saw 15 million Americans sleeping in every empty lot.
You were 13 years old.
Oh, about 13-ish,
Wow.
13 and a half, somewhere around there. And I said, I looked around, I noticed that in store windows there were radios, umbrellas, vacuum cleaners, but people didn't have money. If they had the money, they'd buy them. And then I hear politicians say, I'm going to make jobs. You can't make jobs. If people don't have purchasing power, they can't buy stuff. And if they can't buy stuff, you're going to have a recession. And if you have a recession, they lay people off in stores because they don't need as much help. But if you go to a big market today and you're honest, you'll notice they're working on a way to get rid of the cashier. You run a card through. And if the more industry gets rid of people, there's be 3,000 people in the auto industry. Today, robots pick up the car, put the wheels on. They're doing away with people.
Isn't that progress?
It is not a machine takeover. It's machines being assigned tasks that man can't handle.
Is that progress?
Not really.
Why do you say that, Jacque? Why do you say that's not progress? Because it's my understanding that that's leveraging science to...
Because if people don't have purchasing power, they can't go to school and become engineers. The more scientists you have working on cancer and heart disease, the safer you are. The worse, if you deprive people of jobs, they're going to steal, they're going to do what they have to do, if not for themselves, for their kids. So thieves are made by a given culture. For example, there used to be a guy named Albert Fish. They believe he ate 30 or 40 children. That's the belief.
He ate?
He cut them up and they cooked them.
Albert Fish.
Now, a doctor named Wortham, psychiatrist, said, don't put him in jail. I want to try to find out what made him that way. That's the important thing. Finding out what makes a criminal or a serial killer. People say, I don't know, I guess he's just born that way. No. Nobody is born anyway. No Chinese baby was ever born speaking Chinese, no matter how many centuries they've been speaking Chinese. So they felt if you took an English baby and a Chinese baby and brought them to China, the Chinese baby would learn to speak Chinese faster. They both learn at the same rate. So all the things we believe, I'd say 99% of our beliefs are strictly bullshit.
Wow. Jacque, can I ask you a question? What do you think of the Zeitgeist Movement, and what do you think of Peter Joseph?
Peter Joseph pointed out the shortcomings of the banks shafting the public that can lend more money than they have. He pointed out the stock market. He pointed out religion as being a false structure based upon ignorance. Man didn't know where all this came from, so I figured God made a man and a woman up in the clouds, and they lived in a beautiful garden. And then it says in the Bible that snakes walked upright in those days. And the snake told Eve to eat of the fruit of knowledge. But I was also told in my religious training in the old days that God knows everything. So I raised my hand and said, why did Jesus insult God? I said, I don't remember Jesus insulting God. I said, yes, just before they crucified him, he looked up and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And God said, gee, I didn't know that. If he knows everything, you don't have to tell him that. That's an insult. It's like telling a cancer specialist that cancer of the fifth lumbar is very difficult to treat.
Your work was featured in 2 of the Zeitgeist movies. That's correct, right?
It was featured by the Zeitgeist Movement because people said to Peter Joseph, okay, the system is corrupt. What can we do about it? He said he didn't know. So Roxanne sent him the book called The Best That Money Can't Buy. You have to do away with the money system also. Now, he got that book and he flew out right away and he spent many hours with me. And he says, I got the idea now. I'm going to run it my way. I said, you can't do that. I've spent 75 years on working on this. You have to study more. He said, no, I got the idea. I can make a movie or anything else. I said, you're going to have to go on your own. So I split with him because I've been working on it for so many years and doing away with my own beliefs in order to understand what shapes human behavior. So I really went into the guy that was a serial killer, and the public wanted to burn him alive, torture him and everything. The public doesn't know what makes him that way. So this is what Wortham found out, but he did not put it in his book, that he was touching his private parts when he was 7 years old. A kid touches every part of his body. He doesn't touch it thinking of sex. But his mother was an old-time Baptist, so you're going to burn in hell touching that part of your body. You'll be tortured continuously for eternity. She scared the hell out of the kid. And the mother said at 2 in the morning, he was screaming. So she went into the bedroom, he stuck needles into his genitals because he didn't want to go to hell. What do you think a soldier is? Sees movies of Japanese and Germans raping American girls and says, I'm going to enlist in the army. It's propaganda on all sides. They all work the same way.
Wow, that's some powerful imagery, definitely. Yeah.
Jacque,
I don't have the time to go into hundreds of examples.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just have one more question about the Zeitgeist, and then we'll move on. There's so many people like both what you and Peter Joseph say, and they would love to see some way for you to work together, and they said, is it an ego reason why you have clashed, or is there some way, because you both have brilliant ideas, or it would be so nice if your ideas were promoted on a different stage? Is that something you would ever consider doing?
Let anybody go off in their own direction.
Okay.
Like an elderly Jewish man came to me and said, will you permit tradition? I said, will you? He says, yes. I said, the Ku Klux Klan meets once a month for 60 years. Is that okay with you? He said, no. Then how do you decide which tradition? The tradition that hurt people will be surpassed. Traditions that don't hurt people will be used. Then they tell you, always be honest with your kids. Teach them to be honest. And I noticed the kid says, Daddy, where do babies come from? He says, the stork brings them. Line number 1. Line number 2, how does Santa Claus come down the chimney? It's too narrow. He's fat. They say, well, he has a way of doing it. That's line number 2. And then they give them Cinderella, the Mickey Mouse Club, all kinds of crap that they belong to, and books that are irrelevant to the world. That plants grow, and insects, that life has purpose. There's no purpose to life. When you look at an animal with 3 horns, they say the animal's born with those horns to defend itself. Where are the horns on a rabbit? You can sure use them. If you take a turtle and turn it over, it can't get back. Its legs will move, but if it had a point on the back, the naturalists will say the reason for the point on the back of the turtle is so it can't turn over. They project their own values into nature. Some horns go sideways, some go forward, some go back, some go around. The animal is born with every which way horn, and they learn how to use them. If you were born with a heavy bony growth on one side of your body, you'd turn that toward the attacking animal. Do you understand that?
I think so.
So I said, how do you know that that's true, Jacque, to what you think? I says, I don't. So I used to train police dogs to lead the blind. And a woman about 60 walked over to one of my dogs and was petting it. I said, what are you doing? She says, it's such a nice dog for helping the blind. I said, I could have raised that dog to tear soldiers to pieces. There's no good or bad dogs. Depends on how you raise them. She said, you know, I never thought of it that way. I said, think of it that way. There are no bad people. There are people with insufficient information to make appropriate decisions. Husbands and wives argue continuously, the same old argument for years. People will never argue when they understand the Venus Project. If you understand where a man is coming from, if he was born in France, he says, La Tour Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower. And you say, they're funny people. They speak funny. Because you were brought up to speak English, and you think that that's the right way. There's no right way or wrong way. There are improved methods that can be constantly engendered.
So to summarize, you want to keep your ideas your own, the Venus Project and Jacque Fresco's ideas, and you want to not have...
True.
Oh, that's not true. Okay, so Peter Joseph needs...
more exposure.
Okay, he needs more exposure.
Yeah, I told him, come on down, well, I'll work with you on that. He said, no, I got the idea.
Okay, so he still has an open invitation from you to come down.
Oh, he always has.
Okay, well, that's good, because a lot of people from the Zeitgeist Movement want to see you two work together more.
Well, he made a great presentation in the opening. It was one of the most successful internet presentations. And they said, Jacque, why did you leave it? Why didn't you work with him? Because he said he will use the Zeitgeist Movement as the activist arm of the Venus Project. But he never consulted me what the activist arm would do.
Okay. Interesting. Were you happy with that being an activist?
No, he quoted from my books all the time as though he had worked on all those things. He hadn't worked on them. And he doesn't know the detail of how to raise children to become creative. He doesn't. I say, how would you do that? How would you prevent automobiles from hitting each other? He said he didn't know. I said, well, you have to have... it's wrong to criticize government without offering a possible alternatives. So there are signs on American highways that says, drive carefully, slippery when wet. I would take down the sign, put abrasive in the highway so it's not slippery when wet. Instead of having a sign, drive carefully, school children crossing, I would have a pavement designed like two combs intersecting. When a kid pressed a button across the street, the pavement turns up, so no car can hit a kid. That's the way I say I love my people.
Okay, no, I understand that. Do you have an activist arm of the Venus Project, or do you want to have one day where...
Yes, we have.
You do? Okay. What do they do?
If they're architects, they sign up, I'm an architect. If they're bridge engineers, I'm a bridge builder. If they're psychologists, they sign up. But most psychologists try to adjust people to fit in this system. They have to be stupid to do that.
Okay.
Jacque,
And most psychiatrists try to fit you in with the system. That's no good. Psychiatry is not a study of human behavior. And you can't study human beings to find out what makes human behavior. You have to study the environment they're raised in. Like in the South Pacific Islands, I wanted to know as a kid, is man's reaction toward a female inborn or is it trained? I said, I don't know. So I worked on a boat and I got off in Tahiti. But there they said to me that human beings are all different, but they didn't know what the hell shape behavior. So I said, do you guys know of any islands that are primitive, without money, without schools? They said Tuamotu. So I worked my way over there and I brought mirrors and beads, which I was going to give to the natives to say, I didn't come to take anything away from you. I've come to understand your culture. Anyway, they were already in my hut about 3 hours after I landed, and they opened my suitcase and were giving out my mirrors and beads to one another with a great big grin on their face. Now, to me, that looked wrong from the culture I came from. And I said, what's going on? They said, you have too many mirrors and beads. I did have a lot of them, so they were sharing them. But I didn't understand that until 3 days later, when they pulled in a net full of fish. They threw fish at anyone standing there. Didn't say, you owe me $5, you owe me $8.50, nothing like that. They just gave it to you. And then...
Is that a resource-based economy?
Yes.
That is.
So I asked them, I said, do you want me to do anything for you? They said, no. And I said, will you help me build an outrigger canoe? Because I want to go canoeing with them. I can build a better one than they can, but I want to participate with them. Do you understand that? I also know how to make better bow and arrows than Indians, because I know more about the science of it. But I don't do that. So they got in a huddle. They didn't say anything to me. They disappeared. They came back a week later with a canoe they made. They put it on the ground. They indicated that that's for you. I said, do you want anything of me? I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. They didn't want any payment or any work from me. And about a week and a half later, I'm not sure this time, I heard rustling outside my hut, and I looked out. They were sneaking off with the canoe they gave me. And that looked strange to me. So I came out and I said, what's going on here? They said, you no use. I didn't use it, so they took it back. I didn't understand that until later. Do you understand? I couldn't understand their decision-making systems. Because where I came from, you gave a person a gift, you never took it back. And I thought that was wrong, this was right. And then I realized later, of course, different cultures have different values.
Are we any closer to a resource-based economy now than, say, 30 years ago?
Not really.
Okay. Do you think it can exist? Do you think the transition can be made from capitalism to resource-based economy, or is that going to be done in a violent way?
I don't know. We may kill each other and never see it.
Nick says that sometimes it would take a revolution to cross that bridge.
No, the public is not well enough informed. In Syria, if they threw out their government, they don't know what to put in its place. This is the problem.
Jacque,
all the revolutionaries don't know what to do. Neither did the communists. And they say, is your system communist? I said, no, communism has banks, it has money, it has positions of social stratification. We don't have armies, navies, prisons, or police. Well, how do you maintain dynamic equilibrium in society without police? By making things accessible. See, what you don't understand is women marched to get a public library once. to make books available. People couldn't afford books. Books were very expensive in the old days. So when the women marched to get a public library, they had rotten eggs thrown at them, tomatoes, and they were told to get the hell out of that group. And the women wanted the books to be available. And the people that threw rotten eggs at them owned bookstores. They felt if people made books available free, they wouldn't buy books from bookstores. That's why they did it. There's always a reason for it. But the women got the library in. And people read more, and they bought more books than ever from the bookstores.
Wow.
They were wrong. So next door to the bookstore, I have a camera center where any citizen of that country can go in, just like the library, and check out a camera. Next door to that, musical instruments, just like the library. You can check out a saxophone, mandolin, anything is available. If you make things available, people have no reason to steal or lie.
That's interesting.
Jacque,
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
I wanted to ask you, Jacque, I mean, it's pretty clear to both of us and to anyone listening that you're a very intelligent, open-minded individual. But it seems to me, as someone who doesn't know you very well, that you have made up your mind on a lot of things. And I wanted to know...
Oh, I never did. Because when I was a kid, I used to work for airplane people, pilots. Mm-hmm. And I was always curious about airplanes. And the pilot used to look out and he'd say, I'm about a mile high. With Doppler radar, it hits the ground, comes back up, and tells them you're 5,300 feet, 5 inches off the ground. Far better than any man can. So all Army planes are equipped with a better equipment. It's not an equipment takeover. It's assigning equipment to jobs that man can't do. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. When airplanes fly 2,000 miles an hour, you can't see an enemy coming. Gone. So they have radar scope in the military aircraft. And the radar goes way the hell out and tells you in the next 7 seconds the enemy will appear within your scope. And a dot appears. Now, if you press a machine gun, no bullets come out today unless that plane is within the cone of fire. Do you know what that means? Mm-hmm. Where the bullets are. So today they make machine guns for soldiers, and no bullets come out if you're off the guy. And there's a laser beam, and if it's on the guy and you pull the trigger, bullets come out. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying.
Now, if you get mad at somebody and you shoot him with a gun, but you miss the heart by 1 inch, you're not a murderer. If the gun is over 1 inch, he's now a murderer. What the hell's a murderer? He's a guy that doesn't know how to handle a certain problem, and he uses a gun. Do you know what I mean? To try to solve the problem. Or a guy may shoot his wife if he catches her in bed with another guy. Or he may shoot them both because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do. This is what he's been given. You let that guy say that to your wife? You let that guy look at your wife with sexual intent? I'd knock his block off. We go and we watch fights, prize fights, where a man punches another man in the head and the brain is always damaged, not sometimes. The more you punch him in the head, the more brain damage. We won't even want to see a prize fight. Children wouldn't want to hurt another child if they're raised in a sane society.
Jacque, you're 96 years old.
Yeah.
You've done so much work in your life. What's left for you to do, or what's the one priority right now in your life? In your life's work?
To train other people in this way of thinking and teach them how to approach people that have a different way of thinking. And I went on a global lecture tour to every country, and they say there were audiences, 300-400 people. And I'd say, did you learn anything? They, all the hands would go up. And they say, we can't operate in our culture anymore. I said, if you don't talk to other people, nothing will happen. When you hear about the Phoenix Project, if you just keep it to yourself, you're going to get involved in nuclear war, environmental destruction. So I don't know what people will do. I can only recommend what they can do. What they can do to make things better.
Do you ever think about retirement?
No, I can't think that way. There's so much to be done, so much misery in the world, so much suffering. And it's because they don't have the tools. Now, they're not bad. Your prisons in America are filled with criminals. That's not the way to treat criminal. Put a man in jail. That's the worst thing you can do. And when he doesn't behave, you put him in solitary confinement. That's another stupid thing. Where are all the psychiatrists and psychologists that say that's a stupid thing to do? Where are all the military people that say, how can we prevent war? They think you need armament and anti-aircraft guns. No, you don't. War has always been big business, lots of profit. You get $1 billion for every submarine you sell, every aircraft carrier. So war is never about bringing democracy to another country. They tell us in America that we send armies there to bring democracy and free women. No, it's because they have oil or something we want. We're no better than the English or the French or the Germans.
What are your thoughts on that, Brian? Do you agree with what he's just said?
He makes some very good points about that. I mean, when you see Iraq and Afghanistan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see footage of us?
They had nothing to do with the planes flying into the towers.
Okay.
That's the first thing that comes into my mind.
Okay.
Second thing that comes in is I've watched all kinds of television, and I never got the reasons for these planes going into the tower. He just said they did a terrible thing and we're going to make them pay for it. But they never gave that side of view. So I looked into that, and we've been killing Arabs and Sunnites and others for 75 years. We've been slaughtering their people. That's why they flew into the towers. Americans don't know that, so they think, Jesus, I got to enlist. They don't know. And I can't get on the air. If they put me on the air, they did that in some stations. They give me 3 minutes. I can't do anything in 3 minutes. I can guarantee that. So I refused. They say, we can't let you on for an hour. The people fall asleep. I don't believe that. I believe they're hungry for knowledge. They want to know. And as long as I can talk, I will talk to them about it.
Jacque, I have another question for you.
Right.
Is there anything you have been completely wrong about when it comes to your ideas on futurism?
In the old days, yes. When I saw the Klan people beating up a black boy who just was walking down the street, they beat him up. And I said, in those days, I said, why are you beating him up? He didn't do anything to hurt you. They said, a nigger lover from the north. They don't hear that, because they're brought up not to hear that. And I said, how do you account for blacks making inventions or new ideas? They said, they got white blood in them, that's why. So you must understand that they must be trained to keep those viewpoints.
So what have you been wrong about, if you look back on your career?
I got beaten up in the old days when I was straight.
Okay.
So I learned how to talk around the subject and bring them around.
Okay.
I was speaking more about
Very
the actual.
expensive.
I was speaking more or referring to, about the actual tenets of your system and your view of how we can improve society and tech.
That came from the Great Depression, when 15 million people were sleeping in every empty lot. I looked in stores and they had all kinds of equipment, but the people didn't have money. So I figured, if we can do away with the money system, if you put up $500,000 to help him get elected as president, you owe him a favor.
Do you want to do it, Brian?
Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I do understand what you're talking
about. There's no such thing as decency and ethics. It never existed. Like I met a young girl that said, Jacque, would I be free in your society? I said, what do you mean by free? She couldn't even describe what the hell she was talking about.
It's probably
People
the language.
don't know what it means.
Well, Jacque, what if we elected you president this year and you started in the Oval Office January 20th, 2013?
I'd be shot in 3 days.
Okay. Assuming we had a great security detail, what would you do if you could do anything?
I'd declare all the world's resources as the common heritage of all the world's people and get them to join and become one nation who takes care of the environment, the earth, the atmosphere, no smoke coming out of smokestacks, just warm air, using the Cottrell precipitator. Cottrell is a guy in America that 75 or 80 years ago made a unit that can take smoke particles, charge them, and then make them adhere to a plate, and the water flushes the plate every week.
All right, so
and no smoke comes out.
Okay, that and abolish nations. You think that's a big...
We abolish all separate nations because they're all corrupt.
And the banking system, what would we do with
Bank
that?
is gone, no money anymore.
Well,
That would be some chaos in the streets in the
And
beginning.
also the conduct of people. You can't outlaw sex. You can make laws, but they don't work if they're against nature. So politicians make all kinds of laws, not based on reality. Like when I went to the South Seas, I didn't finish that. I said that people in the South Seas wore no clothing when I was there. They all were naked. And I noticed that the men never looked at the women's body. Always the eyes when they talked to them. Because they were swimming nude ever since they were tots. Do you understand what I'm saying? And there were no peeping toms on the island. Because you didn't generate the environment that generates peeping toms. And there were no fetishes. There were no tit men, leg men, ass men, hair men. You know what I'm talking about?
Unfortunately, I do.
If you're brought up in an island where you don't have pictures of nude women, girls dancing, stripping their clothes off, that makes men, hey, get a load of that chick. You get that from your environment. If you were brought up in the South Seas, you'd never look at a female body. Unless the chief likes the girls with a big belly, he feeds them before he marries them. But that's a custom of the island. And the witch doctor, he says the volcano is angry because he has to account for eruptions. And so he says, I recommend that you throw your brother-in-law into the volcano to placate it. So the witch doctor used to recommend those things. And then if you did throw your brother-in-law in and the volcano kept active, it says you got to throw your sister-in-law in, never the witch doctor.
well, never the
king.
mother-in-law, unfortunately.
You understand?
Yeah.
So all societies with kings and queens are all bullshit societies. They're all manipulators of people. I'm trying to hate to disappoint you, but I could say things you like to hear, but that's not my position.
No, I want to hear the truth. What do you think of England and London and the British?
Foul, awful, no city planning, stupidity, homogenized.
We were in a taxi on the way over here, and Jacque was talking about the street lights and how they were timed and how it was just a complete waste of energy and pollution by having the cars all gridlocked on the street.
Interesting.
He was dropping some transportation science on me.
Oh, transportation's
What was it? Oh, yeah.
You got everybody driving cars. You got roads and highways built by the car companies. And the one senator said to me, Jacque, when you work on a highway, can you bring it over about 40 miles and then turn? I said, why? He says, because I got 90 acres over there. It will raise the value of my acreage.
How many times does that happen?
Probably a lot.
It happens all the time. There's no such thing as a decent politician because they're not smart enough to know what to do. I had a very wealthy guy come and see me. He was worth millions. He said, Jacque, if you're so smart, how come you're not rich? I said, you're rich, how come you're not smart? So he hired William Gazecki to make a film on me. Well, Gazecki left out all the social stuff.
Did he? It's probably convenient. Can I get you to slide just a little bit closer?
He
to the
left
front?
out most of the social stuff.
Okay.
Because he felt it won't sell. And so I can't deal with that.
Well, because your Venus project is so technical with your designs and your new city structures, and it's also very social with how you talk about how you bring up babies. I think it's sometimes confusing for people.
Yes, it is.
To get their head around all of that.
I understand that. That's the best I can do.
What's the best way for them to educate themselves about the Venus project?
They can't.
Okay.
They have to get the book and read it.
Okay.
Called The Best That Money Can Buy.
The best that money can't
It's
buy.
called, what's that?
The best that money can't buy.
Yeah, that's a book we wrote.
Okay.
And if you read that twice, you will have the knowledge of what makes humans behave as they do. They say today, they try to tell you, this man has a criminal mind, this man is creative. Not true. None of those things are true. They're all brought up under different circumstances. So I got the book out of the library because I wanted to know how planes can fly on this thin substance. I asked my folks because they didn't know. I looked at my folks as peasants. I didn't look at them as honor thy father and mother. When I was a kid, I believed in honoring any human being worthy of honor, not necessarily a father and mother. Depends on how honorable they were. Do you understand? You don't just do things because the book says so.
Right.
You talked about, you said you went on a lecture tour 2 years ago, 26 countries in 26 weeks. Can you believe that, by the way, Nick? That's crazy.
It's pretty impressive.
And you said that if people...
I hit him straight, no bullshit.
I saw one of your lectures in Sweden. It was no bullshit, that's for sure. And you said that if people don't go out and tell other people about what they've heard from you, then it's all lost.
Yes.
It's okay.
And they say they're growing now and they're forming new organizations all over the world, which is good. So I know that's not in vain, the work that I'm doing. Of course I can't reach everybody. There are people that believe in human nature, that people are naturally jealous. So I met a group of psychologists and they said, jealousy is an inborn thing. So I said, what's your evidence for that? They said, whenever I reach for my cat to put it on my lap and pet it, the dog growls. So I said, gee, that's interesting. So I took my dogs, since I used to raise dogs to lead the blind, I took my dogs and I fed it fresh liver, and then I'd pick up the cat. After giving him liver 9 times in a row, before I reached for the cat, I would reach for the cat and the tail would wag. If it was inborn, they'd still growl.
That's interesting.
They don't even know how to conduct a survey. They don't know how to do research. So I read about people that had the power of telepathy. And I said, gee, if we can do that, the hell with science. So we invited a guy over from India, and I said, can you read my mind? He said, any time. I never use a telephone. I said, if you read my mind once, I will shout it from the highest towers. He says, well, I do it all the time. I said, just suppose I'm thinking about something technical. He says, I won't use your words, but I will describe what happens. I said, that's fair enough. So I pictured a little white mouse about this size, eating an elephant, not getting any larger, and walking out of the room. If he got that, there's telepathy, because it's outside the box. Normal people think of their brother-in-law or their wives or their kids. Well, when he talked to a 73-year-old woman, the same guy, he says, there's been a death in the family the past 3 months or 3 years. She says, yes. When everybody's 73, there's always a death in the family.
So did he read your mind?
So he used probability.
Okay.
He wasn't a bad guy. He just thought he had special powers.
But he didn't?
No.
Okay.
So I invited people that had the power of telepathy in my house. And this guy sent his wife into my bedroom. I never saw them before. And he said to me, just get one of your own books on presidents. So I picked James Fillmore. I just didn't even mention his name. I pointed to the picture. It said James Fillmore. And he said, honey, you can come out of the room. And she came out. She said, I see a politician with hair puffs on the side of his face. And his name is James Fillmore. Well, I didn't know how he did that, but I went to the library and got out some books on magicians, how they work. Sitting like this means Kennedy. This James Fillmore. So whatever position he assumes, he communicates with his wife exactly.
Yeah, it's called the Black Mirror technique.
Yeah, but if you don't know that,
it looks amazing.
I've seen it with my own eyes. Then I had another guy come over. He said, I'm going to convince you of telepathy. He says, get yourself a picture of movie actors. So I got my own book, and I pointed to Gary Grant. He's an Englishman actor in those days. And I pointed to Gary, didn't mention his name. He said, now call this guy in England. His name is Throckmorton. He'll tell you who you pointed to. So I called Mr. on my phone. I never saw the guy before. And he says, I see a skinny, tall English actor. His name is Gary Grant. Do you know how that's done? He has a friend in England named Smith. If you ask for Gary Grant, or you ask for anybody, he has a list of names. When you ask for Mr. Fillmore, it's John Birch. If you ask for this guy, it's that. Do you understand what I mean by a list?
Yeah.
But if you don't know that,
it looks like
I've seen
amazing.
it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
Before you try to investigate extra-physical phenomena, read everything you can.
That's good advice.
As to how it's done.
I have one more question for you, Jacque.
And then we're going to have to wrap this up because we're almost finished with our hour here.
So, Jacque, we were speaking earlier. I was asking if you ever considered yourself wrong about anything, and the example I wanted to refer to was your city of the future with the centralized supercomputer. It's my understanding now that in computer science, we're moving to a distributed model, something called cloud computing, which is apparently the way to harness the most out of IT infrastructure. I mean, surely you would have updated your plan of the city of the future to include something like that, and as opposed to remaining with the...
I see the Venus Project later, after the transition, as being computerized, no government, no people in government, but the computer has to be connected to agriculture, production, heart disease, kidneys, so we know how many hospitals to build. The question you're really trying to ask, who makes the decisions in the Venus Project? The answer, nobody. They arrive at them. In other words, we take samples of the soil from all over the world and send it to Central Agriculture. There they dissect the soil, and by the contents of the soil, they say it's best to grow beets for 3 years, then rotate to corn. That's not an opinion, that's a finding. So in the future, we do a survey of the carrying capacity of every environment. That determines the size of the city, not Fresco.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
So it's like a leaderless society. Our hour is up. You know, Jacque, it was a real honor having you on the show.
I hope I helped some of you.
I think so. I think our audience doesn't know much about you, and they'll be really intrigued about the Venus Project. And thank you. I think you were our only media stop here in London. So
thanks for
thank you very much.
We really appreciate that. If they want to know more about you, they can go to thevenusproject.com.
Yes.
And they can follow you on Twitter at Jacque Fresco and at The Venus Project.
I have no credentials. I just want you to know that.
We don't either.
I have the same credentials the Wright brothers had. Did you know that scientists used to write books on why man can't fly?
I didn't know.
They're not scientists. They should say, I can't conceive of how to build a flying machine. Then they're okay.
We're all
but when they
limited by
start
our
forcing
perception.
their own opinion on the story of Jesus or Moses, they're projecting.
Wow. You know, Jacque, I'd like to invite you back here in 4 years for your 100th birthday. I'm sure you're going to still be fighting.
I don't know. I don't know how long I'll live, nor do I concern myself with that.
Good.
That's cool.
That's a great way of living.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's very cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, Jacque. Thanks for
Thank
coming
you
in.
for the opportunity, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jacque.
And Nick and I will be in LA in about 5 weeks for the Joe Rogan Experience, so hope everyone tunes in for
We're
that.
going to Russia and Slovenia.
Right. Oh, this next week, aren't you? You're up to
Yeah.
Bosnia and then Russia. So
Yes.
Wow.
excellent.
I don't know how it'll work out, but they want us there.
Good. I think you need to go ahead and tell more people about this message. So
Yes.
thank you so much, and until then.
It's about the journey.
All right. Thank you much, both of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
This week on London Real, we have martial arts specialist and BAFTA-winning screenwriter, Jeff Thompson.
The ultimate fear was this fear of confrontation, so I became a nightclub doorman. You trigger the adrenaline so hard in them that all of their instinct just wants to run away.
Just because they walk away don't mean they ain't coming back.
I've had people confront me 20 years after a fight, and to them it was yesterday, and they're hugely violent individuals.
Come on, you cunt! Come on!
2 of my friends were killed in fights, and 2 of them were assassinated in their cars.
Some of us just died it better than others.
On each step of the pyramid, I wrote down a fear. Least fear at the bottom,
Right.
worst fear at the top. Then I basically just confronted those fears one by one until I'd overcome them. Writing has been more difficult for me than standing on a nightclub door with people threatening to kill me. It doesn't really matter what you are, because everything is just based on perception. It's whether where you are is where you love. If you surrender to potential, you become potential. When we change perceptions, we change reality.
On Sunday, London Real presents Jeff Thompson, Conquer Your Fear.
If you can master one thing, you can master all things, because the template is the same.